Guess how old I am? 91.
What?
What?
91?
91.
Wow. That's amazing.
It is?
Yes.
But you know what, Colby? It's only a number. It doesn't mean anything. You can be old, pretty old at 25 or 55 or whatever. And this was another party that I planned.
Nice.
Oh, and there's me water skiing, slaloming. Not bad for an old lady, eh?
Yeah.
I am Margaret McNeil, born to Janet Cameron and Walter Cameron, June 6, 1930, in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. I was named for my father's mother. I have cousin Margaret Cameron, and in Canada, they call those double cousins. I have always tried to be positive, and my friends often commented that I was. I'm quiet until I feel comfortable when meeting new people. I love to have fun and like to joke a lot. I feel I'm quite organized in planning programs and running the nursing home. That for 16 years, I tried to be active in every area and enjoyed visiting many foreign countries. In April 2021, I spent 2 weeks in the big island of Hawaii and planned to cruise to the north coast. I learned to cook from watching my mother, and that was really a good thing because my mother's brother lived in Westlock and found out I was a cook and invited me to go out to Powell River, British Columbia and cook for him for the summer. Each summer I did that for about 4 years. And it was a lot of fun, and I took my brother or a cousin with me. And we did a lot of fishing, and that was really, my pet was fishing. My mother's family lived in Westlock, Alberta, 50 miles north of Edmonton. They were homesteaders, and my father's brother also was a homesteader, a farmer, and had many reunions at Westlock. I loved the farm. And I spent all holidays and summers with Auntie May and Uncle Mac. I did, helped with the homesteading, helped with the chores and all that. I always said I wanted to marry a farmer, but didn't do that. My parents were strict but loving. My father built a skating rink in the backyard, and we skated all winter. And in the summertime, that was converted to a garden. I have very fond memories of childhood too. My father worked for the railroad, and we got passes on the trains, and it was a 48-hour trip. And we slept in the day coach, and my mother there were 5 of us, and it was the best time of our lives on the train. And then my mother got housekeeping rooms in Vancouver, British Columbia, and within a block of the English Bay, which is a big swimming area, and it had slides with water running down them, so you just spent a lot of time playing in the water. Then did meet at a church camp a young man, and he decided that maybe we should go for a walk. And when I went for a walk, and guess what? The fellow that was in charge of the camp saw me, and he gave me a big lecture on not being, sneaking out. But anyway, it was just a fun time. I went to Spruce Avenue School in Edmonton for the first 9 years, and then I went to Victoria High School, where I got my matriculation so I could go on to university. And I was the monitor in grade 12 algebra class, and my husband, or future husband, sat beside me. I used to smile at him, and I flirted a little bit. But anyway, he asked me out of the blue if I was going to the grad dance, and I said, oh, hadn't thought about it, which was kind of the story. But anyway, I went home and said to my mother, smartest boy in Victoria High School has asked me to go to the grad dance. So I always worked hard for money because my parents weren't wealthy, but they were hard workers, and they provided. So then I went and figured out how much it was going to cost for me if I took somebody that wasn't graduating, and I guess you might call me a little bit frugal. So then I decided, well, guess I'll go with George. So I went with George McNeil, and that was the bit, and he always said that was the best day of his life, that I decided to go to the grad dance with him. I love my husband, George, dearly. My George was a student engineer, and this was a story about when he was in college, and me. The only means of transportation was a bicycle. So he asked me to go to the engineer's ball, and I had a long dress and I sat on the handlebars. And then he also built a Van de Graaff generator and display, and it was all these sparks flying around, and I just stood there beside him, and it was just what I did. And then he decided that it was time that I learned how to shoot. So we went duck hunting, duck shooting, and he said, he got me in the front of the boat, and he said, okay, now when I say take the safety off, you take the safety off. And we were in a boat, so I was sitting at the front. So he said, take it off, and so I took it off, and he revved up the engine, and up flew the ducks. And I fired the shotgun, and when I went, I found I had killed two ducks with one shell. So then we were fishing in the lake, and I had put the worm on the hook and all that sort of thing, and then so I was just dangling it out to the side of the boat, and he said, "My goodness, woman, you'll never catch anything like that way." Bang! I got the biggest jackfish in the lake. And so we did a lot of things. I also sang in the mixed chorus when I was in university for 4 years, and I never was afraid to not do something. One time I had a coffee, and in Texas, and it was mostly Monsanto gals who came, and they said, "Margaret, could we talk to you?" And I said, "Sure, what?" "Well, could you change the time you cut the lawn? You cut the lawn," which was the coolest part of the day, "when my husband comes home from work, and he says, 'There's that Margaret McNeil out there cutting the lawn, how come you don't do it?'" So I said, "Okay." So I changed the time because I wanted peace in the neighborhood. I had a lighting contest in Alvin. I started, and I got a load of sand put out on a corner, and we got bags and candles. And do you know what? How many years later? 1968, 45 years later, they're still doing it. I found out, and they're doing it, and that I started, and 40 years later, they're still, and people from the town of Alvin all come out and see this little neighborhood. Before we got married, about 2 months, we were going to be married in September of 1952, but anyway, a couple of months before that, I thought to myself, you know, it's terrible that I've never earned any money, you know, babysitting little bits and all that sort of thing. So I said, I wrote my George a letter, and I said, I think I should come down to Ontario where you are and get a job, get a nursing job, earn money, and then I can buy my wedding dress and my trousseau and all that stuff. And he said, so he called me, and he was really upset, and he said, "You mean we're not going to get married?" And I said, "No, we're not going to get married. I need some money." So he said, "Well, how much money do you need?" And I said, "Well, maybe $300 would cover a lot. That today would be $3,000. Anyway, he said, "The check is in the mail." So I guess I'm a bought woman. What do you think? My husband was hired by Monsanto Chemical Company in 1961, and we were moved from Canada to Alvin, Texas. and I lived there, and then after he was transferred to Western Massachusetts. We did a lot of touring to different parts of the world, as well as in the US and Canada. And we moved from San Francisco to Alvin, Texas. I was a nurse, and I trained in the University Hospital in Edmonton, Alberta, and I've done a lot of nursing since then. I've had a lot of hobbies that I did. I played tennis. I also did a lot of gardening. I love gardening. And then we had built our own cottage out at the lake in Canada, and he and I, with hammer and nail. And I was the chief tamper, and a tamper is somebody that takes a 2x4 and goes up and down when they pour concrete to make sure that it's all leveled off and everything else. And anyway, I had been very active in the Engineers Wives Club in Canada, and even did the can-can with the group. I learned a lot of things when I was growing up, especially George felt that anything he learned how to do, I had to learn, like cut the lawn, run the lawnmower, everything. And so I learned how to snow ski, water ski, and then I was the first in the family to become certified scuba diver. So when I had gone to the islands and had taken like the island course, I came home and I went to noticed that the Y was having a class on scuba diving. So I signed up. So I had come home and I said to my husband, guess what? I bought my Valentine gift. He always liked me to buy my own gift and then tell me later. So I said, yeah. And he said, what's that? And I said, I'm going to take scuba diving lessons. So I was the first one of the family to become certified. So I'm proud of that. And because I was an old lady, I was in my 60s. I learned how to sew and crochet and knit and do all kinds of handwork. And then I began weaving on a loom. I've done that for years in Florida especially, and also basket weaving. And I took basket weaving, and I made my own cookbook, and I used to just love to do new things. And George had made some old dining room chairs, and he left them all doweled. Dowels were all sticking out. So I thought, boy, I'm going to teach him. I'm going to go to night school and learn how to make the oak china cabinet, which I did. And I had glass doors on the front and drawers and cupboard. And it was really a great job that I did. Of course, they were all, mind you, I was the only woman and about 14 or 20 men. So they all would say, well, do you need any help? Do you need any help? So I had lots of help. I loved my husband, and of course the children. We had the 4 children, and my oldest daughter is a chemical engineer she worked at Exxon here in Houston, and then my son is an electrical engineer, and he's up in Massachusetts. And then my second youngest is a girl, and she's a nurse practitioner in Colorado. And then my baby is also, the surprise package, became an chemical engineer also. We did a lot with them. We did in Texas and in Massachusetts. We had a cottage about 26 miles from Springfield, and that's where we all learned how to water ski and enjoy the summer. But I got the surprise of my life. I had number 4 child, a beautiful girl, Catherine Ann. The other 3 loved her deeply. They felt that it was their responsibility to help me so I could go snow skiing. After Catherine was 6 months old, Cameron said it was his responsibility to look after the baby. And at the time, he was 13 when she was born, so, I didn't know, I questioned my sanity that I was leaving a 13-year-old to look after the baby. She was 6 months old. But he did a great job. We went to Killington, which is a big ski area in Vermont. And when I got home, there was a pile of diapers. Back then, there was not disposable diapers. Pile of diapers on the changing table. And he said, I said, and even the cereal was still out. So I said, what have you done all day? He says, my goodness, Mother, I looked after that baby. And he was, said it was a lot of work. But anyway, I was lucky at catching fish. And Lori, my daughter, got a picture, and it showed 3 big bulldogs and 1 poodle. And the bulldogs have no fish, and the poodles got all, they said this string of fish. So they always said to me, when we were going fishing, they said, make sure the poodle's coming, because I was lucky and I always seemed to catch fish. And he would take the boat out to the reef, and then he'd call me and say, okay, come on up. And I would say, okay. So he'd say, go south. Well, I had a feeling that the fish were north, so I would wait till he got down and got all the lines out, and then I'd slowly turn around and go north. And he'd yell, woman. He often called me woman. Woman, what are you doing? I said, I think the fish are in the north part. And sure enough, we caught a lot of fish that day. But they always say, we've got to take the poodle along. But anyway, that was kind of a fun thing, and we always had, we had fun fishing. We traveled a lot in different parts of the world, but Asia was one place we went, and my daughter was with us, and her husband. And she was one that liked to really be adventurous. So she found that she could rent a raft, and it had built up sort of sides, but it was all raft. And we were going to go down a river with a man at the front and a man at the back, and they would be down this river. And so she did get mosquito netting, so that if there was any mosquitoes, which she didn't happen to have. But anyway, that day, so we went down there, and they stopped and got a live chicken from one of the farmers, and killed it, plucked it. They made a skewer, made a barbecue, and we had barbecue chicken for dinner, for supper that night. And then we went further down the river and went to an elephant farm, and we all rode elephants, the 4 of us, and we had a blast. It was just a wonderful thing. And I love textiles, and any of our trips in Africa and in Asia, any of those places, that was one of the things that we really especially made sure we got to. I hiked in Machu Picchu, and my husband had a sore knee or something. He couldn't go. He took the bus, but I completed the journey walking. I think we walked most of one whole day, and so I was about, the 6 people that were with me were all in their 30s, and I was in my 60s, 70s. And when I got, they all clapped when I finished. They said, you know, you're really spirited. We used to sing and dance with all the natives, and but that sun gate, when I came up over and saw the sun gate at Machu Picchu, I didn't know if I should laugh or cry. I was so excited, because that was a real achievement for me. One of my friends decided she'd pull a prank on me, but she didn't know I was pretty smart. She came out, because I got home one afternoon, and from driving all the way from Edmonton to Texas, and she said, I'm going to see you. And I said, okay. So she come racing out. Well, she left me at one point, and I didn't know what she was doing, but I didn't inquire. Well, then when she left, there is a pair of fancy, sexy pajamas underneath the bed, and some of it's hanging out, so she said, so I didn't say anything. Well, she'd gone, and I said this, I showed it to George, and we laughed and laughed. We knew that she was playing a little joke on me. But anyway, so I said, she called me that night, and she said, how's everything in the house? And I said, oh, fine, fine. Well, we kept that up. She was so scared. She thought I was going to get a gun and shoot George. He had an affair while I was gone. But anyway, finally, her husband worked at the same place as George. And he said, oh, are you ever doing a job on her? you know, think he's had an affair. But that was the fun thing. She was a fun gal. George died in 1986, which is really very sad for me. But I have a daughter here living in Houston, and 2 grandchildren and 5 great-grandchildren. So that really adds to my life. I love my children and very much, and spouses, and we all did water skiing and at lakes and snow skiing, and we're all certified scuba divers, and including myself. When I go back and look, I loved every minute of my life, and it's like I cried. I worked, and I have great advice to young people: work hard, play hard, and be positive. Stay away from negative people. Make sure you're sorry if in discussion. That was a story that my grandson was having a little tiff with his fiancée, and he was at the lake in Massachusetts, and they had come there to visit, and they were having a tiff, and I took him aside and I said, "John, you know what you need to do? You need to say you're sorry." He said, "I'm not 100% sorry." I said, "Are you 2% sorry?" "Yes." "Okay, say you're sorry." And so he did, and mended the discussion. That was the end of it. And so then he sent me a Valentine. He said, "Nana, the best 2 words that I've ever learned from anybody is that you say, 'I'm sorry.'" And so be grateful and appreciate what you have. He's kind of baldy, and that kind of covered it up. And this is my surprise package, Catherine. And this is her up here, there, and then she's there with a blue headband. And my son is over there that's kind of squatting. Oh, caught fish. We used to fish a lot. And then some of my son-in-laws. And then this is my artwork that I've done. My apartment is full of art, pictures. And but I've been painting watercolor for several years. So I kind of enjoy it. It's kind of just a hobby. And then I told you that back there is my nursing class, and my class was 44. But there's probably only about 15 of us left, because we're all in our 90s. And, but anyway. Oh, we had a skip, and this is my wedding dress, and it was an anniversary. So my granddaughter and grandson, he dressed up as George, and this is my wedding dress, and she was wearing it, and it was the 50th wedding anniversary. And this is just extended family and friends that came. Here I am water skiing. There's George water skiing. This is my son, and he has this little farm that he's got, and this is a ski show that he was very involved in. He still is. Water ski show. That's one of the pyramids they had. That's George water skiing. And well, that's just a picture of this. George loved getting lobsters, and this was in Florida. These are the spiny lobsters. They're not like the northeastern lobster, but they're very good.
Yeah.
And so he would come home with all kinds of lobsters, and I would go with him sometimes. They weren't in traps. He'd have to dive for them. That's George.
Okay.
I was president of the garden club, and so this was when we had my entry to become president, and I was president for 3 years. And garden club, we had made flower arrangements, and these are some of mine.